Could the Charlotte Hornets trade the second overall pick? There is a team out there interested in possibly trading up for Scoot Henderson. We'll get to that today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
We're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube, as always. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And David Walker makes his weekly appearance. The Ace of Lace, the nickname that appeared in the Lost episode. Maybe 5 viewers saw it in total. So now we are bringing it to the masses. David joins us once again. That's Doug Branson. Catch his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. And you can listen to me every weekday on WFNZ from 12 to 3 p.m. So, no, we're not going to talk about the NBA Finals in the first segment. That's what everybody else is doing.
That's history.
We are Squidward in the Eastern Island head house, looking out on Patrick and SpongeBob, running around talking about the NBA Finals. We are in the house getting ready for draft season because the Charlotte Hornets, we don't know who is going to go at number 2, whether it's going to be Scoot or whether they're going to take Brandon Miller or whether they trade it, because we got some content to talk about.
Whoa!
The number one storyline people were discussing yesterday before the tip actually happened in Game 5, it was about the Charlotte Hornets a little bit. So Charania of The Athletic, he reported yesterday that the New Orleans Pelicans are going to be aggressively pursuing a trade up to 2 or maybe even 3 if it means they can land Scoot Henderson. Doug, I'll go to you with some of the details here. What did you make of some of the reports on the Pelicans possibly moving up? And it has to be Charlotte, right? If they want to secure it. And if it's not Charlotte beforehand, then it has to be draft night if you're going to trade for Portland.
It scares me. I'll just say that right now. It scares me that everyone wants Scoot, and it scares me that this front office that might not be the front office of the future is responsible for deciding whether or not to draft Scoot Henderson or trade the number 2 overall pick and what that package would look like. It scares me that it's New Orleans because they've taken a lot from this city, and I'm just scared that all of the bad juju would be around this trade. But it is very intriguing, and I think if you zoom out and take the New Orleans out of it, I think there will be multiple teams that are interested and calling up Mitch Kupchak with all kinds of offers, because I think and these rumors all center around Scoot Henderson. I think we should pay attention to that. This is the guy that everybody, I think, is going to be trying to move up for, because they know that Victor Wembanyama is inaccessible. And so if there's a second guy and they feel like it's a 2-person draft, then they're going to go hard after Scoot Henderson, and that's going to drive the price up. And the price could be star players like Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. It could be multiple draft picks. It could be multiple players on that roster, because it seems like New Orleans at this point understands that they've got a lot of money invested in 3 guys, Ingram, McCollum, and Williamson, and that big 3 is not necessarily going to work out, and they want to, shift towards the future.
All right, so Doug, you can update the people on the poll in a moment. You put out a poll on the YouTube Locked On Hornets channel community page. Before that, I want to get the first answer from David. How much are you entertaining trading the second overall pick to the Pelicans with whatever package you might want in return?
If it's including a pick and a star player, I think you have to entertain it. Otherwise, I don't want any part of it personally. I think the benefits of having a young player, especially a Scoot, who you think can be like a game changer, a franchise changer on a rookie contract for a couple of years and try and figure things out, I think is too valuable in my eyes. The only thing they have, Ingram's the only guy that I would want. I know we're going to get into a poll here, but Zion, before, the injuries and some of the spotted history, was intriguing, but at this point, not for the number 2 pick for me, if they can work something else out. But yeah, it's all interesting that all of these trades right now, we're talking about trading up for Scoot. I think there's a reason for that. And the Hornets need to be wary, So for me, you have to really think about it, but the early packages or the early thoughts I saw from some folks out there were like, would it have to include Zion or Ingram? And it's like, yes, it would. For the number 2 pick, it absolutely would.
Yeah, I think so too. So, Doug, what was the poll you put out on the community page, and what were the results?
So the Sicko survey went out on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe there. There's a community page. If you go to our YouTube actual page, you can go to the community page. We put polls and all kinds of stuff up there, so check that out. So the Sicko survey asked a very simple question. The Pelicans are reportedly in the market for Scoot. Which player would you most like to be part of a deal for the 2 pick? Now, a lot of people jumped in the comments and said, none of these players, I didn't make none an option. None of these players, we want Scoot. But I did make people pick. And right now, after 427 votes, great sample size, Brandon Ingram, 50%, Zion Williamson, 44%, and then 5% of the sickos wanted CJ McCollum, which is just incredible. He was the third party. Yeah. I thought it was going to be 0%. I really did. No. But I decided to, out of respect for a fellow podcaster,
solid player.
I decided to include him. But it was Ingram and Williamson, and Ingram took the lead.
I'll say this, though. CJ would bring a lot of leadership, some maturity to that locker room.
That's right.
Is he not president or is he vice president? The fit is everything. You know that, Doug. Fit is everything these days.
Now, would Portland be interested in CJ McCollum, do you think? You think
that's
there
what
would
I
be
want to explore. Yeah.
Could be
somebody give us a paint. Yes. Give us a mock-up of what that might look like.
Right. Yeah, one of those like Photoshops. Can we get that? Can we figure that out? Okay, so but in all seriousness, before we dig into, because I think second segment we should dig into Brandon Ingram or Zion Williamson, who would the Hornets rather have? Because I think David's right. One of those players has to be included for this deal to make any sense. You can't trade the prospect of a future with Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller, I guess, for other future assets. That would be just like what they did last year. You're trading a pick for what could be a worse pick. I wouldn't want any part of that. I think it would need to be, for me, to feel comfortable with it, because I am so high on Scoot Henderson, his ability to be an all-NBA level player, floor general, a guy that can guide you to a future championship. You know, I think it would have to include Zion or Brandon Ingram. I think it would have to include multiple picks. And I think it would have to include a guy like Herb, who can help you on the defensive end of the floor.
Oh, yeah.
Herb Jones. Like, I think you gotta have some other piece in there too. Like, I want to drive that price up as far as possible, because you saw the comments. People want Scoot. They want the future. They want the shiny thing that hasn't come off the car lot yet. And so you have to have a Rudy Gobert level deal coming back your way, or people are gonna be really upset about it.
And doesn't that seem high? I mean, doesn't it seem like a lot? And you're just talking about, I know we're talking about Scoot, and I know we love him. But I'm with you. Like, it has to be that level of wow. But that just seems like a ton. That's a huge haul.
I'm scared.
Deservedly
I'm scared.
so. But it can't happen. New Orleans, it cannot happen, Doug. You're
dead
scared.
On.
That's the first thing I thought about. New Orleans, it cannot happen.
But all I want this franchise to do, this front office, all I want them to do is just dog sit. Just sit my dog, just make sure my dog doesn't die. That's it. Don't like try to fix anything in the house. Don't cook anything. Don't use the stove. Like, don't sleep in the bed. Like, I just want you to come over and make sure that my dog is fed and that the dog has water. That's it. Don't ruin anything before I get back to the house. That's it.
Okay. We have a soundbite from Jake Fisher. We can get to that in the second segment. We want to get to it.
We're going fishing? Got a big one?
All right. Yeah, we'll see what fish it is coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Wes and Walker, that famous show from 12 to 3 on WFNZ every weekday, had a chance to talk with Jake Fisher about the number 2 overall pick, the Charlotte Hornets in general. He gave us a lot of good stuff, including on a potential Pelicans trade before this news even broke. We can get to that in just a moment. But first, I wanted to remind you that this episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It matters with eBay Motors. It does not in the NBA draft. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to the My Garage tab and look for the green check to know the part will fit or you get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Just get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. More Locked On Hornets coming up.
Is Locked On Hornets.
Walker, sometimes you don't have to have the best package.
Okay.
Sometimes you just have to have the only package. If you wait, if my dating life taught me anything, sometimes you just have to wait around long enough until you're the only thing remaining. And then suddenly, you look pretty great in comparison.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
All right, Doug, let's take us back to Friday when we had Jake Fisher on of Yahoo Sports. Renaissance man, covers the game for a lot of different publications. And he has a podcast, I believe, called Please Don't Aggregate This. And we're going to aggregate his work because that's why you bring Jake Fisher on. Wes asked him about potential stars you could go after if you were willing to trade the number 2 overall selection. And this is what Jake had to say after Wes asked the question.
We're dead set on going big fish hunting, and who could they get with the number 2 pick, even if they had to add more. The call has to be to New Orleans and see if they're willing to listen on Zion Williamson. I would think a Carolina guy who hasn't exactly had a straightforward situation for himself with the Pelicans, that would be my first call.
Big fish hunting. He knows. He gets it. He understands.
He knows the brand. He 100% knows the brand. Yeah.
Was this pre-Zion social media explosion?
It was not.
Or was this during? Okay,
it was not.
But that had come out and prior.
I'll give you the timeline. So the timeline, the timeline was Snapchat controversy, Mariah Mills, all the Twitter blow up happening as the week goes on. We have him on Friday. He pitches this idea. My immediate comment following the soundbite you heard was, can we have a no Snapchat clause in the contract if they trade for Zion?
Can someone Cliff's Notes that whole situation in case anyone hasn't been paying attention to Zion Williamson news?
Walker.
Yeah, we'll put it in our rundown. We'll put it in.
I can try if you'd like. I mean, he seems to be intertwined in a little bit of a love triangle. There is a future baby on the way, and there have been some social media posts back and forth between the women that he is intertwined with, and now it all seems to be out in the public, and there it is.
That's it.
His business is out there.
Yeah, and just for the kids listening out there, parents, if you want to turn it down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, Mariah Mills is a porn star, and Mariah Mills and Zion Williamson had a relationship, and Mariah has been going nutso on the Twitter, being very graphic about their experiences in the bedroom, extremely graphic. And Zion, now there are even pictures, screenshots of Twitter exchanges between the two. And Doug, you and I talked about this off camera. It's not like we really care too much about that. You'd rather it not be a part of everything with Zion. But the reason you are worried about trading for somebody that dominant when he's on the floor is because the injury history is so bad. It's because not only do you have an injury history, we get a little taste of this with Gordon Hayward, but it's the fact that the injuries mount up, and then every time there's a diagnosed or some kind of expected timetable, he doesn't return at the initial timetable of return, right? So that's a problem that it just continues on. And we do have an all-star appearance. This isn't so Greg Oden-like where injuries picked up and just snowballed into a point where we never saw his full potential. We've seen a lot of fantastic potential from Zion already. But the injuries and the health, it's still so much of a concern. Where here's my take on the number 2 overall pick, right? If the whole goal of trading the number 2 overall pick for an established all-star, which Brandon Ingram has one under his belt, and so does Zion Williamson, if the whole goal is to mitigate risk, is to reduce uncertainty, you don't do that with Zion Williamson. So if you're going to do this, then I'd rather do it for Brandon Ingram. But if we want so much, and Brandon Ingram is a single all-star, last year, great numbers all across the board, underrated playmaker, 5 assists in 50 games that he played last season. Also a little bit of an injury history the last couple of years too, not to the Zion extent. I don't know if that is the thing where you point to as the detriment and deterrent to not make this trade happen, but a little worrisome there. At the end of the day, man, I just want to take Scoot. I just want to get to the podium. I want to have Scoot Henderson, and I want to be done with it.
It feels cleaner. I mean, honestly, it feels so much more simpler. And the only reason I asked that about Zion was it just wasn't sure at what the timetable, because like you said, that stuff doesn't really affect what you're looking at on the court. But think back to the end of the season for New Orleans. Zion was, going to come back, maybe come back, never came back, so there's probably some frustration there from fans and the team there just on the injury front too. But that's the reason why you're wary about including Zion. I mean, I think we tossed his name around, in the middle of the season last year just as a possibility, just because of all the injuries. But I mean, Gordon's played probably more games than Zion has as of late. So it's super risky, and that's why you would need more. And that almost feels like it wouldn't be enough.
With the Zion stuff, I personally don't care what he does with his personal and private life that's all of a sudden become public. But I think to say that there's zero chance that all of that isn't somehow connected to a person's on-court performance. When you have all that, again, I don't know if it is or not, but we do know the injury history. And there are a lot of concerns, and whatever you think about it, I think there's a reason his name is coming up right now. And I think, I was listening to Locked On Pelicans, and they were putting it this way. Essentially, the host there was Jake Madison was saying, look, I don't care what he does, but I think Gail Benson does. The owner of the New Orleans Pelicans, she's been pretty clear about her views on, the conservative nature of her views, and it could result in Zion being on a new team. But I think what's more concerning for me in terms of the conversation around Zion or Brandon Ingram is the contract situation. Zion's locked up for a number of years on a very big number, but that number is locked in. As salaries go up, that number gets cheaper and cheaper. Brandon Ingram, only a few years left on his deal. It's a big number as well. But I think, if Zion does work out, like if he turns things around, if everything's all right after this point, if he's done with all the drama and he's done with the health issues, like the prospect of Zion and LaMelo playing together is super exciting to me. And it's way more exciting than Brandon Ingram, who I feel like is a player that's very, very good, probably a Brandon Miller ceiling. That's what you're looking for from Brandon Miller.
Yeah,
but that's not, to me, that's not somebody that drags your team to a championship. Zion and LaMelo. Okay, now I'm interested.
Healthy Zion, yeah.
Healthy Zion, yeah. Sure. No, it's a big risk. It would totally be a gigantic risk, but I can think of few players where I would go, wow, the reward is not worth the risk. I think the reward of Zion, if it all works out, would actually be worth the risk. If it includes a lot of multiple draft capital and possibly some other help around the fringes too. It can't just be Zion.
Well, it'd have to be like the 14, right, this year, but it'd have to be almost more than that, too.
I'm talking future. Yeah. Because here's what you would want to be in a situation that Boston found itself in. You're essentially betting on New Orleans it not working out. You know what I'm saying? Like you want to be Boston when they did the deal with the Nets, and all of a sudden they had the third pick because it all fell apart in Brooklyn. That's what you would be. That's what you'd be hoping for, whether that's pick swaps or just outright first round picks, whatever it is. I want that deal to be on the level of the Rudy Gobert situation with Minnesota and Utah, where even if Rudy Gobert had worked out, which he didn't, in Minnesota, Utah was set. I want to be set.
Just to be clear and detailed on how many games Zion has missed.
You
go to his rookie season, 24 games is all that he played. He played 61 in his second year in the NBA. 2020, 2021, 61 games, 33 minutes per contest. Did not play at all in 2021 and 2022. This past season, he only played 29 games. 114 games in his 4-year start to his career so far.
That's terrifying.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying, and it brings up something that I've talked about multiple times on the show. They stretched Nick Batum's contract, and that contract ended up being a failure. They stretched that to make room for Gordon Hayward and that contract, and that's definitely not lived up. What if you want to call it a failure or whatever? It's definitely not lived up to what they wanted it to be. So then, if they turn that into Zion Williamson and the length of that deal, and it blows up, I mean, the levels of failure there would boggle the mind.
Just real quickly for comparison, you brought up Gordon Hayward, David. So 114 games in the last 4 years for Zion, 143 games for Gordon Hayward in the last three. 114 in the last 4.
It's Iron Man. Yeah.
Can I just get Scoot? Can you please just give me Scoot?
Right.
That's all I want. That's all I want, man. All right.
I think that's where all three of us are landing, that all of this sounds very exciting. I don't know that New Orleans would be willing to give up the amount of assets that I think would make Hornets fans comfortable. Hornets fans would need to feel like they have fleeced the New Orleans Pelicans. And I don't think those deals typically get to that point, especially around picks. A pick like Scoot Henderson, where you don't really, you can't know for sure whether it's going to work out or not.
You had something, David, real quickly?
No, I was saying, I mean, they do have the assets, right? I mean, David Griffin has the tools to play with down there. But dude, those numbers you mentioned for Zion, I mean, that's all you need to know. You don't need to know anything else about their readiness to probably move on or some of the frustrations they've had with him down there until you list those games. I mean, you just think about that. When he's been out there, though, you know, all NBA, all-star level impact and just like immediate impact on the floor. That's why it's so tempting. But you put those numbers on paper, man, it's terrifying.
I've got one more tweet to share if you'll allow me. Sure. So this is from Sean Hyken. He's a veteran Blazers reporter. Right now does independent reporting for the Rose Garden Report. And this is a tweet that he had yesterday. Had an exec, not with the Blazers, tell me lottery night that the third pick is, quote, a hell of a lot more valuable than the fourth pick, unquote. Starting to see the reports of all the teams that want to move up for Scoot. That's why. And he also goes on to say, as I've said the entire time, any trade that does or doesn't happen involving the third pick will happen while they're on the clock. Need to see what Charlotte does first. And so if teams, those are the tweets. If teams can't get a deal done with Charlotte, they're going to wait to see what Charlotte does. And if that pick isn't Scoot, then teams are going to be calling up the Blazers. But I honestly, I don't believe if they go Scoot too, I don't think any teams are going to call up the Blazers asking about Brandon Miller. I just don't think it's going to happen. I haven't seen anything like that.
No, we haven't seen any reports. If a team wants to move up and take somebody in the draft, it's mostly been reported that it's Scoot Henderson. So we'll see how it all unfolds. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't overthink this, Charlotte.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Maybe we'll finish some thoughts on the NBA draft, some of the rumors surrounding the Hornets, but also we did crown an NBA champion last night. Congrats to the Denver Nuggets. We have some thoughts on the NBA Finals. We'll give you those in just a quick moment. But first, I want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make your way to FanDuel right now because new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. They have great promotions every day. It's a safe and secure app. You can get paid instantly, so there's no better place to bet on all of the playoff action, regular season action too, than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Final segment coming up next. Locked On Hornets.
Is Locked On Hornets.
Mitch Kupchak, will he do the thing that he has not done in season this entire
anything
time?
The thing that he has not done
it
is anything.
Comes back to do something.
Just do one thing.
You need to get a stick from outside and become the meme in person because it always comes back to do something.
Do something.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
We heard in the Jake Fisher analysis on Zion Williamson that he's a Carolina guy, to which, if you listened closely enough, You can go back and rewind it and catch it again if you want. You could hear Doug snicker in the background, and you could hear David say, "There we go." Because
it always comes up.
We've heard it all before. Zion being from South Carolina, then going to Duke, certainly these parts of the woods. Brandon Ingram also from Kinston. Brandon Ingram from Kinston, recruited heavily by North Carolina, decided to go to Duke, and then eventually drafted by Mitch Kupchak.
Oh,
Brandon Ingram, it's the last first-round pick for Mitch. He was fired before they drafted Lonzo the following year at number 2. But Brandon Ingram, the last first-round pick for Mitch Kupchak when he was with the Lakers organization. So a couple ties there. We'll see how much Mitch really likes Brandon Ingram if he wants to reunite himself with him here in the Charlotte Hornets organization. All right, Doug, I know you had some takeaways. The Denver Nuggets, they beat the Miami Heat last night. They win the series in a gentleman's sweep. Miami took care of game 2, but ever since then, it's been all Nuggets. They've won comfortably. Last night was not comfortable whatsoever. It was a rock fight, but Denver found a way. KCP had a huge 3, Nikola Jokic, in an efficient game and in an inefficient game for everybody else. What were some of your takeaways watching the Denver Nuggets take home the championship?
Yeah, look, Denver has drafted extremely well to get to where they have gotten to. They've made savvy trades. I mean, the Aaron Gordon, move to bring him in was just magic. But the big takeaway, I think, is that Denver has operated with a level of seriousness. And their coach, I mean, Mike Malone, man, that guy, anyone that has to deal with the Sacramento front office at any point deserves a championship. So happy for Mike Malone. But there's a couple things going on in Denver. Stability, right? Stability of coach, stability of core players. And there's a seriousness to that team. There's not a lot of drama going on there. And they've had health issues that have prevented them from reaching their ceiling. But really, this has been a team that has been in the championship conversation for a few seasons now. And, if the Hornets are looking for a blueprint, that's what you need. You need stability. You need a core. You need to draft well. Obviously, they still need to find their superstar. Maybe they found it in LaMelo. Maybe they'll find it in Scoot. They still need to find that level of player that's on that Jokic level that's like, wow, nothing Miami could do, and Miami is a really good defensive team. Nothing they could do could scheme against Jokic. That's what you need. You need that advantage that a team can't battle for, and that's how they won the championship. And I think those are the lessons you kind of take away as an NBA fan.
David, any lessons or takes for you from the NBA Finals?
Well, once they saw what they had in the Joker, they pressed the gas pedal down and built around him. They went for it, right? They had Nurkic. Yep. They drafted the Joker anyway. Said fit be damned. We don't care about fit. To Doug's point, it was the 41st pick. So, but we're not into fit picks. So you draft the talent that's there. Once they saw what they had, they made moves to ship Nurkic out, and then they started building around the Joker. But, yeah, I mean, Malone and Joker have been together, I think, like 8 years. Something like that. So, they've sustained that success. It may be a little easier for them to be under the radar. That's why you have people watching these finals and be like, man, that Joker guy is he's pretty good, right? He's really good. And the Heat get so much credit for their culture, which, look, I'm sick of it, but I can't deny it any longer. Like what they did in this postseason, it's just it's the proof in the pudding. You know what I mean? So they did their work, and I kept thinking, if there's a guy to bring it back to us and Scoot, if there's a guy at the top of this draft board that screams Heat culture, it's Scoot Henderson. I mean, he looks like a Jimmy Butler type guy, that's going to drag everybody up and make them better. Brandon Miller might be that guy. We don't know. We'll never see any of these interviews. They'll be lost with our lost episode of the podcast from last week. They're in the cloud somewhere. But I think if you're looking for examples to take away from these finals, it's finding guys like that and finding something you can build around when you see the opportunity. So there's time to make moves, and there's time to keep building. And the Nuggets have done it the right way.
If Pat Riley calls Mitch Kupchak about Scoot, here would be my advice for Mitch Kupchak. Okay, hang up the phone politely out of respect for Coach Riley, not Pat, as David Walker likes to call him when he sees him on the streets of Charlotte, disrespectfully. Sure. You say, thank you, Coach. You hang up the phone politely, and then you pick the phone back up and you call up Mark Tatum and you say, hey, Mark, the pick is in. It's Scoot.
I want it to play out like that. That would be perfect if it played out like that. My takeaway from the NBA Finals, it's that everyone wants to point to the Denver Nuggets, how they built their team. It all starts with Jokic and having the biggest bang for your draft pick of all time. It doesn't really come close with Nikola Jokic being there at 41 during the Taco Bell commercial. We all see the 11-year-old chubby kid picture, whatever, right? Nobody thought that guy would possibly be a top 10 player when it's all said and done. And nobody thinks the Denver Nuggets are going anywhere. We already have a 2-time MVP, last 3 years, top 2 player in the league. Now he's got a championship. I do want to say they've done an excellent job in the NBA draft, right? Really have. Jamal Murray at number 7 overall fell to him, I guess, and they made the correct draft pick there. You talk about the savvy trade, taking Aaron Gordon, getting rid of what people thought was some decent talent in RJ Hampton. Remember, everybody's like, hey, this isn't just some throw-in. This is a real guy. Like, they took a chance trying to go after someone that could help their star at that point. And they, remember, took a big old swing on Michael Porter Jr. Injury concerns be damned. This is the guy with the highest ceiling. He's there at 18. Let's go ahead and take the chance. What I want to say is that they weren't perfect by any means, though. So when the Charlotte Hornets, if we want to do the whole always make it local thing, if you look at the Charlotte Hornets, they need to do some right in the NBA draft. There's no doubt. And they've done some. They haven't hit on Jokic. They haven't hit on a guy like Murray. Maybe LaMelo is that guy right down the line. And he's already an all-star. But they also drafted Donovan Mitchell and traded him. It's a massive mistake. Like, that's a huge mistake. They traded him for Tyler Lydon.
How many championships does Donovan have?
Tyler Lydon,
0.
and Trey Lyles. So traded him for both of those guys. And you're also talking about an Emmanuel Mudiay pick at number 7, the same draft that Frank Kaminsky went number 9.
Yeah.
So they've had some mistakes in the NBA draft, and they're still able to fight their way out from under some of the mistakes that they've made and actually have not only just a good postseason run, which all we're asking for is for any kind of postseason run, but to win the whole damn thing. It's the classic, you can never recover if you draft a quarterback and miss in the first 3 picks because it sets you back a decade. Only if you let it. Only if you let it set you back a decade. There is some of that can translate to the NBA draft. Denver, yes, you have to have the star, right? I'm not being naive and saying, oh, everything can happen. Just find your Nikola Jokic at 41. That's not happening. It's never happened before. It might not happen again. But it didn't allow Denver to never win a championship or get far in the postseason, and they've had their lumps along the way.
But you don't need 3 stars. I think maybe we are entering, we're coming out of that big 3 movement and into something that's probably more sustainable for parity, for NBA parity. I mean, you've got now the Bucks and the Nuggets winning championships. That has to give hope to you as a Hornets fan. I hope it does. I hope you're not so sick that you are just devoid of all hope. This should give you hope. Yes, you have to have a generational talent like Giannis and like Jokic, but you can find that in the top 3 of the draft. It doesn't have to happen at 41. It doesn't happen to happen. I think Giannis was 15 or 13. It doesn't have to happen there. It can happen at the top of the draft, and the Hornets now have that pick. They have that opportunity, and I hope they make the right call.
Let's hope so. We'll see. It's man, I can only imagine the amount of rumors that'll ramp up as we get closer to the NBA draft. We're only
everybody's out of the finals now. The heavy hitters are going to come in. The rumors
Godfather
are
offers.
Flying.
I mean, there will be Godfather Part 1. There's going to be Godfather Part 2. We just hope that the Hornets don't take Godfather Part 3. You know what I'm saying? That's the deal you don't want.
No, you don't want that. All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks again to David Walker, Ace of the Lace, Doug Branson. Check out his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, and you can catch me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. We appreciate it, everyone, joining us and making us your first listen. Now make your second listen, game-to-game NBA, every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every contest from across the league with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Just follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Just when I think it's Scoot, they pull me back in.